So we have a very interesting dynamic here, where one side is looking at the other side and saying that the way they see things doesn't have facts, scientific theory, when it's actually a theory meant to explain what is considered observable facts. There's a question, of course, as to what is a real fact and whether or not it's being interpreted correctly according to the theory that's supposed to be explaining it. But then you have the same people, as I said, turning around and claiming that Christians have hope or faith. They equate the two often as the same. That's just a belief, right? Like just some belief we have in our mind that's not rooted in evidence. So each side is looking at the other in a similar way, incorrectly at times. And of course, this gets in the way of productive discussion about what is really on our minds, both atheists and Christians. Evidence, right? Do we have evidence that supports our theory, our scientific theory? Do we have evidence that supports the hope that we have, our faith? That's really the key, isn't it? But if we each look at each other and think, well, you just have a theory and that doesn't have any facts, and you just have faith or hope and that just doesn't have facts, well, then we're going to be arguing over that instead of the facts. And I want to try to move us to the evidence, to the facts, and grant that each side is claiming they have facts. They have evidence, right? Atheists claim that their scientific theory explains, right, like evolution, their evolution of unintelligent mutation of one life form into another, or the unintelligent cause of life from non-life, if they don't take an eternal view of life in some sense. So they have a theory that's evolution, right? These random things that take place that usually involve already existing conditions and atmospheric things that we'll get to in a moment. But their theory is that this unintelligent cause is behind it all. There's not an intelligence behind it. There's not a God. And so they can't really point, though, to an instance where life comes from non-life. It never happens. Not once. So it's a theory that attempts to explain facts that there's life, right? We all agree there's life right now. So that's accepted as a fact. But evolutionists or atheists who don't believe in an intelligent cause of life, or even of evolution from life to another life, don't have evidence of evolution in the first instance, that is life from non-life. Nothing. They don't even have one example of it. Christians who believe that life only comes from life, and so therefore life must be eternal and the cause of life, because life doesn't come from anything else but something alive, have more evidence supporting that view, theory. It's a fact, right? Life always comes from life. It's not a theory. It's a theory in the sense that you could say we put it forth as an explanation for the facts we observe. But again, there's not one exception. It happens every day, countless times a day, across every living type that we see reproducing as life from life. So we don't have anything that contradicts that explanation for life being here, or for life being eternal. Atheists don't have any observable instance of life coming from non-life. So how could it be a credible scientific theory even, right? That's a theory in the sense that I think most Christians often refer to when they say, you just have a theory. Right? Now, it's a little different when you get to the species mutations and things, because, right, they can point to different actual mutations, right? They don't really develop into whole species, though. But there's at least something to work with on an observable level when it comes to the theory of evolution that involves mutations of life. Okay? Christians don't believe that's correct and doesn't correctly explain all the different types of life that exist and how they can't crossbreed in ways that would show they're related. But when it comes to life from non-life, they don't even have anything. Not one single thing. So that's the kind of theory Christians often refer to and say, that's not evidence-based. There's no facts behind that. Yeah, you may have some facts or things you can say with this mutation theory you have about species development, but you do not have anything to support your theory, your scientific theory that claims to explain what you observe, life coming from non-life. So why are you putting it forward? When you can observe, like we can, the exact opposite happening all the time. That's really the problem with atheistic thinking and their inability to accept life only comes from life based on everything we know and can show and observe. We're not talking about things that we don't know about, or we only base what we theorize or accept as fact based on what we can observe. So to claim that, as I do, that life is eternal because life always comes from existing life, you're just rejecting what you can see with your own eyes, like I can with mine. And then you're trying to claim that it doesn't come from pre-existing life, I guess, but you have no evidence for it. So your theory is so different from ours in that respect. It needs to be pointed out because as Christians, we need to be accurate as well. We need to be able to differentiate between a scientific theory that has some observable facts. It's just not accepted as scientific fact because it's not as evidence-based. A scientific fact has more repeated acceptance as being conclusively the case than a theory does, even though a theory can have, and usually does if it's correct, facts, which is what give rise to the explanation for it, the observable theory, the theory that attempts to explain what's being observed. So there's a difference, though, isn't there, between a theory that has facts and a theory that does not. So atheists are often doing the very thing when it comes to the origin of life that they say about us with respect to God. That we just believe it with no evidence. We just hope like just an idea in our mind that we came up with, but that's not based on anything we can observe. When in fact, it's definitely the observable theory or fact kind because it's based on life. And life only coming from life. Whereas their theory of life not coming from life has no facts.